Hi, everybody. Hi, Alex. Hi,
Hi.
Mike.
Hello.
It's funny. I just did we did our Star Wars show this afternoon, and I was like, "Oh, Mike's about to head on vacation," and then I realized we had a movie club. So we'll try and keep it short because Mike's got to go on vacation. Like as
No,
soon as he's
no,
done,
no. My vacation starts tomorrow.
as soon
I
as this is
I
done, he turns into like Merlin at the end of Sword of Stone with his Bermuda shorts.
I have a lot to say about the Peanuts movie, so please don't cut it short.
Oh wow. Okay, I look forward to hearing this. So some of you might be like, the Peanuts movie isn't Snoopy on Apple Plus? So
Isn't Snoopy in Knott's Berry Farm?
yeah, so the Peanuts movie was part of a one film deal between Fox's at the time Blue Sky Studios, which is now part of Disney, and the Peanuts people, and they so since it was made by Fox, Disney got the rights when Disney purchased Fox. Probably went through some legacy deals, and now it's available on Disney Plus. So it's one of the. It's a little weird sometimes when you see something like on Disney Plus and you go like, "Huh, I didn't expect to see this," especially when it's like a franchise kind of thing, like the Peanuts, which isn't. It's not like Simpsons, where it's owned by Disney now, you know it, or even like Sound of Music, which you always kind of felt like was a Disney movie. But yeah, so the
So what
Peanuts.
which conglomerates would own the Peanuts at this point, the characters?
So the Peanuts are owned by sort of a group that's part of it's a Canadian sort of children's television group. 20% is owned by the Schultz family, and I think they have sort of like green light rights because everything they do is still produced by like some Schultz, and then so it's not part of like Universal or Disney or whatever. It's just sort of its own little thing. They do have a licensing agreement with Apple, so they're making movie special series for them. The first one being Snoopy in Space, which is kind of like Snoopy wants to be an astronaut. It's a educational thing where it kind of goes through what it takes to be an astronaut. A little 8-minute episodes. I think there's 12, but it's not. It's one of the like freebie franchises that's not owned by some massive company.
And Warner Brothers has home video distribution for all of the like holiday specials and the animated series that were done in the 70s and 80s and I think into the 90s. And a lot of those episodes are on HBO Max right now for streaming.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of Peanuts on every streaming service. But we're talking about the Peanuts movie, which was, I mean, in terms of at least appearance, was the first CGI Peanuts experience. So, Mike, you got a lot to say, so I'll start with you.
Yeah. Well, I will start by saying that I have a complicated relationship with the Peanuts franchise because I grew up on the animated specials. I watched the Christmas one over and over as a kid and still catch it every once in a while. I have the vinyl record of the Vince Guaraldi music and I love that. But I think I've also kind of spent my whole life trying to figure out what it is about the Peanuts that is appealing, I guess. Like, because I feel like the intent of the original comic strip, or the joke at least of the original comic strip, was kind of transposing these very adult themes onto a cast of children. It's about depression and such, and loneliness, and the feeling of being a failure, which is very adult theme, and it's about kids and a dog, and I think that the Peanuts is the kind of franchise that is popular because people recognize it, if that makes sense. Like, I think you see Snoopy and that's Snoopy, and I think the Peanuts movie that I watched yesterday for the first time, the way that they probably wrote it was they got in a big board meeting room and they had a whiteboard and they wrote down a list of like things you would think of when you think of the Peanuts. Like, there's the Red Baron and the World War I flying ace, and then there's like the kite eating tree. There's Schroeder and Lucy, and Snoopy kisses Lucy without consent, and stuff like that. And then they just kind of went through and like put all those things into a script, and it's a very like low stakes movie. There's almost no plot whatsoever. Like it's just like day in the life of Charlie Brown. There's like this overarching story of him trying to talk to the little red-haired girl, and that's really the only plot that this movie has. And I found that very interesting. I thought the animation style was really cool looking. I liked the look of it. And I thought overall the movie was fairly pleasant. Those were my thoughts on
I
it.
think what makes the Peanuts successful through time is you're absolutely right, but I think that's what people want, because it comes from a comic strip mentality, right? So there's little segments, and Peanuts would have sort of recurring segments, for lack of a better word, right? They'd have the talking on the fence. There was the football. There's the self-help doctors in thing. There was always this, there's different gags. And if you watch the specials, a lot of them have these sort of weird, just taking pieces of that and just sort of inserting it into. No, I mean, there's exceptions to that rule. Like, I think, there's times when they've tried to give it more of a plot, like Snoopy Come Home, where it's given it sort of a more Disney aesthetic, where it's, a big sort of adventure. But yeah, I think, I mean, we watch every year the Charlie Brown Christmas gets great ratings, and it's not because people don't know what happens. It's like comfort food. And you could talk about, is this movie strength and breaking new ground? Absolutely not. But what it was able to do was presented in sort of a new fashion. But yeah, it's nothing new, but they and I think that's what people wanted from it. And I was looking at Blue Sky, they have sort of two different tracks, right, where they do like the Ice Age films, or something where it's like their original idea, and then they do their adaptations, like the Horton movie. And I feel like they're so much more successful at taking a story we all know, somehow able to turn that style into CGI, and you go see it as a grown-up and you're like, yes, this is just what I want. It's like not the same where it's like a complete psycho, like Gus Van Sant Psycho kind of situation, but it's enough of some similarity, and you can bring in new people. It's a reason to revisit it. And I think it's okay because it has that comic strip origin where it's basically the same thing. I mean, there's not been a new Marmaduke joke for 45 years, right? But people still read it. And I think, people don't want, I mean, that Charlie Brown, Peanuts ran for 50 years, and there was evolution of it, sure. But I think people like the consistency of it because it was essentially comfort.
The other thing I want to say, just to add on that, I mean, I grew up with the Peanuts animated specials and the TV series. So I was very familiar with the characters. By the time I reached probably my like middle school years and connected, that this animated series that I enjoyed as a child was a comic strip that was more for a more mature audience, I then started like cutting out the comics and pasting them into like a scrapbook. So and I continued doing that through high school. So I had tons and tons of Peanuts comic strips just ripped out of the local paper. And I really appreciate what they did with the Peanuts movie. Like Mike said, they took what and formatted that into a script, but that's honestly what I wanted from a Peanuts movie. And looking at the other animated Peanuts movies that were done by the same team that did the holiday specials, I feel like when you give these characters too much of a plot, or when you have really real stakes, it all falls apart and doesn't really work. Snoopy Come Home, being the quintessential one with the Sherman Brothers songs, but I wouldn't say it's a particularly great film. And, part of it, it's just, Charlie Brown's already a depressed little boy, and then his dog runs away. And it's like, really? You're going to, like, how much more can you kick him? And And so I think that's why Snoopy Come Home doesn't work so great. But when the stakes are, I have a crush on someone and I'm hoping she'll connect with me, it's sweet. Also, I will say the fact that they introduced some new characters to me was pretty bold. You're dealing with something that for a lot of people, the Peanuts in particular have a lot of religious semblance, especially because for their holiday special, they weren't afraid of shying away from, the actual religious aspects of Christmas. So for a lot of people, there's this almost religious connection to the Peanuts. And so, to introduce new characters at this point in the game for a lot of old timers, could have been viewed as sacrilege, but I think they did it so delicately and so nicely that nobody really minded that there's suddenly new characters showing up in the film.
Yeah, and I remember reading about the Christmas special and how, they wanted it to be, the network wanted it to be like a Rankin Bass kind of special, and he wanted it to be true to the show, and that's why it sticks out, right? It's not, it has that jazz music, it has the sort of limited animation and kind of almost episodic, bits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, essentially all the Peanuts is like, designed for today's audience. It's like Peanuts would be great on Quibi. Everything's like a little bit, and they just kind of piece it together, just like a comic, right?
Because today's audiences love Quibi.
Right.
If this year's proven anything.
No, but you just need that 2 minutes of Lucy telling Chuck that she's not going to pull the football away.
Right. And you don't want, you never, unlike, and I don't know the mystery as to why I don't want him to hit the football. But if he ever hit the football, if it was any other character in any other cinematic universe or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, he's finally did it. Whoa, Avengers Assemble. But like, no, I'm like, no, I don't want him. If he gets the football, it ruins the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's, to me, it's like, I don't remember when I first got exposed to the Peanuts. I mean, I remember I remember going to Knott's and there was Camp Snoopy. I want to say it was like Snoopy was on A&W root beer in a football helmet. Like, he's kind of everywhere. Even in Japan, he's everywhere.
Well, and I didn't grow up anywhere near a Cedar Fair park, but like being from the Midwest, the Mall of America is the thing. And like now it's Nickelodeon branded, but when I was a kid, it was Camp Snoopy. The theme park in the middle of the world's biggest mall was Snoopy. And I, like you, I don't have any conscious memory of like discovering Snoopy. I want to say I had Snoopy clothes as a toddler. So it predates my conscious thought. And you're correct. I mean, he's so huge in Japan, even still. When we were there, just like randomly in Old Town Kyoto, we'd find a Snoopy chocolate company. Like they've licensed Snoopy's likeness to chocolatiers, and it's like a chain in Japan. But the other thing about the legacy of Snoopy is Hello Kitty was basically Sanrio's attempt at a Snoopy-like character. And if you just look at that character, it's a very simplistic white cat, black eyes, black nose, no mouth, or a squiggly line for a mouth when she has one. And they just put a bow on her, and look at what that turned into. And that was literally just the Sanrio folks were so enamored with Snoopy and they couldn't get the rights.
I can tell a little personal story. My mom loves Snoopy particularly. So, she didn't grow up with dogs. And so she was like, I love Snoopy. I want a dog. I don't think she realized there's no dog characteristic in Snoopy. There's nothing about him that is a dog. And so I find it funny because she ended up growing loving the dog, but she's always like, I want a beagle like Snoopy. I was like, there's no beagle like Snoopy.
No.
Snoopy is a boy who talks funny. Like there's nothing dog-like about Snoopy.
But I will say we now have a dog who won't go in a dog house, but will go on top of dog house and will lounge there. So that's a real dog characteristic.
It's amazing too, in the comic he can talk, right? Or not, he thinks, so you can read it as he talks. But in the animation, he just squawks. And it's amazing how much characterization you can get out of that. Even even in the sort of television days of there not being a lot of motion there. But
And for actual animators of the Disney like classic characters, Pluto is typically an animator's favorite because you emote so much through them. The bits of animation, particularly in this film, that they give to Snoopy and Woodstock is so fun. I think my favorite bit is when Snoopy gets the typewriter after getting kicked out of the school, and he's just writing zeros or something. They like show you on the screen what he's writing, but then Woodstock like takes a red pen, makes some corrections, he gets all upset and tears it up, and like that little bit is so funny.
Yeah, it's a gag film, right? Like it works on two levels. You have the sort of War and Peace writing a book about Tolstoy or whatever they said. So you get the sort of deep philosophical Nietzsche kind of experience, and then you get the funny little gags of like of kids overreacting to things. And I think that's what made Peanuts successful.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, they set this film in winter, and I think it's just to connect, your love of the Peanuts holiday special with this film. But I'm sad there isn't going to be a follow-up set in the fall, because I'm personally more of a Great Pumpkin kind of guy than a Charlie Brown Christmas kind of guy. And Amy, I see your comment there. If you want more information, if you have Netflix, there's a series called The Toys That Made Us, and they have a whole episode on Hello Kitty, which is where I learned that Snoopy is what inspired her, which was really cool.
Speaking of Amy, let's go around the room.
Oh, it's hard. It's hard to pick a favorite. I think I have two. Pigpen. Just because I think it's so funny that he's constantly surrounded by like a cloud of dust that he just can't ever get clean. And there is something about Linus that I find so charming with his security blanket that he can't let go of.
Alex stole my two answers.
What? I mean, I also like Snoopy and Woodstock. Who's the one who sits at the piano? Is that Schroeder?
Schroeder, yeah.
Schroeder. I also have a lot of love for Schroeder, especially because what's her name? Is it it's Charlie Brown's sister who loves Lucy? Who loves Schroeder? Lucy?
Lucy.
Yeah, she's always like pining after him on his piano, trying to like lay on it like an old golden era Hollywood starlet.
Yeah, I loved Linus because the sort of knowledge combined with complete insecurity kind of resonates with me. But
Linus is the Millhouse of Peanuts, right?
Yeah.
So
except less of a loser.
Yeah.
I guess so.
But then I also used to like Marcy, just because I felt comfort in just following some idiot around and not like having to think.
Mm.
And Amy says Lucy is her favorite. She reminds. I don't know how to think. I'm not playing football with you, Amy.
Maybe she's always dispensing psychiatric help for 5 cents.
It's a good deal.
I will say too, like just on the legacy of Peanuts, the what's the name of the party song? 2 hops this time.
Cha-cha slide.
Cha-cha slide. And then there's Charlie Brown, and everyone just does like the jerky Peanuts dance. Try and flip from one side to the other.
Charlie Brown's where you like rock back and forth.
Or people do the rock back and forth.
I see people do like there's that song like Charlie Brown, he's a clown. Like,
there's also that song about Snoopy and the Red Baron, which I was reading the Wikipedia entry for the other day. And that song is like a 60s rock song about Snoopy and the Red Baron. And it was written entirely without permission from the Schultz.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they sued, and they ended up, I think, settling out of court for some amount of money. And then like Charles Schultz just got all the profits from that song from then on.
Oh, wow.
But yeah.
Yeah, wow. Because that's like a pretty open shut case, I think.
Right.
It's like telling a movie in song, and I mean, I guess like maybe you could claim fair use parody, but I don't know.
I think that song's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Quentin Tarantino movie. I wanted to say this movie, I found it admirable that they didn't go to the well of like contemporary style humor, and there aren't a lot of like pop culture references and stuff. I feel like the spirit of the humor and the tone is all very true to the source material, at least the animated stuff that I grew up on. It doesn't feel like when I've seen a couple of those Dr. Seuss adaptations, like I always feel like the style of humor that they go to is not what Dr. Seuss would have done, you know?
Yeah, well, no, there's good
especially the Cat
versions
in
of
the
that
Hat.
and bad. That Cat in the Hat movie of Mike Myers needs to be like eradicated from existence. But like I liked the Horton movie that Blue Sky did, as I mentioned before. And
I haven't seen that one.
I think my favorite of the big screen Dr. Seuss adaptations is Universal. I think it's Illumination's Lorax.
Yeah,
It's well done. But Horton is well done as well. Curious to see if and when that'll come to Disney Plus.
I also every time I hear Dr. Seuss, I think of the Islands of Adventure BGM.
They have one song. Really makes you appreciate the fact that every Disneyland has at least 10, because Seuss Landing has just one. It's 2 minutes long and then it repeats forever.
Yeah, not quite sure what happened there. But I want to talk about the music a little bit. Like Christoph Beck, who did
Frozen,
that movie that with the two sisters.
Frozen.
He did this movie as well. Talk about the pressure. I mean, is there any animated movie or animated property that's known for as much for its score? Not songs, obviously that exists, but just music and I mean that Linus and Lucy is a standard now wherever you go.
Mm-hmm. Can't ride an elevator at a department store without hearing it.
I remember thinking it was so cool when I went to like some grown-up place and they were playing it. Like, you're in like a department store or something. And I was like, they're playing cartoon music.
I remember feeling so adult when I was in college doing like study groups at Starbucks. And then all of a sudden that like the Vince Gribaldi, like Snow is Falling medley from the Charlie Brown Christmas special came on one day, and I was just like so taken out of my element, because I'm like, I feel like I've come so far, I've matured so much, and then all of a sudden I'm a child again because that's playing.
Do you have a favorite Peanuts dance move?
Oh, that's something we should talk about too, is there's a lot of little tiny hints and Easter eggs at other Peanut stuff in this movie that I really appreciated. They hint at some of those dance moves every once in a while. Like somebody will just be doing one of those dance moves from
like the
Christmas
whole school
special.
dance, the whole school dance sequence. If you just like freeze frame it,
right, and then like there's in the fantasy sequences, the Red Baron sequences, like Snoopy keeps turning into one of his brothers. Did you guys notice that? Like when he blows himself up and he looks like, I don't know, was that Olaf, the big fat brother that he has? And then you see like Spike, and I don't remember all the brothers' names, but and then in the mid-credit sequence, they're all just there, like having lunch with them or whatever. But that was cool.
I like the when he's in the last fantasy sequence where like it's like a the classic animation gag where it's like a light and he keeps like pointing someplace else and then they look over there. Like I just thought it was classic animation gags, which is they're still funny. Like there's a reason they're classic.
And I feel like the casting of Kristen Chenoweth as Snoopy's love interest was also a fun Easter egg.
And they all the Snoopy dialogue or whatever you call it is actually archival from Bill Melendez, who did him forever, starting with Charlie Brown Christmas. So.
Well, and the Kristen Chenoweth connection is You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, the Broadway show based on the Peanuts comics. She was in the original cast. She originated the role of Lucy, and she's on the cast recording. So it was just kind of, you know, bringing it kind of full circle that then she gets to play Fifi. I feel like that show's due for a revival. They should bring that to Disney Plus.
They also because they did a sequel too, like a Snoopy musical, right?
They did.
Do you ever see? So the other thing I think, I know we're talking more about Peanuts than we are about the movie, but like, have you ever seen a shirt and you look at it and you're like, it's just a Charlie Brown shirt? Like it's not supposed to be, but it's like a one shade with like a little design on the bottom, and you're like, it's Charlie Brown.
Well, and like, you know, other Disney Plus related tangent, you know, we got into for a while the nostalgia of America's Funniest Home Videos. And one of the top prize winners was a dad who put his toddler, who was old enough to walk, in a yellow shirt, painted the zigzag on it, and painted Charlie Brown's face on the back of his son's bald head. So, and then he built like Snoopy's doghouse. So this little boy is like walking towards the doghouse, but it's like Charlie Brown walking backwards. And then the kid like turns around. But like he did such a good job with it. It's so funny.
You know, I can't watch this movie and not wonder what the future is for Blue Sky Animation. You know, obviously Spies in Disguise kind of flew under the radar.
I still haven't seen it.
Ergo. And
I saw it.
I wonder, you know, I mean, I hate to say it because people work there, but like the conventional wisdom is Disney doesn't need 3 animation studios. But I wonder, you know, they have several projects in development. I wonder if they're going to keep it, or if, you know, it's going to become like their budget studio and just do it just because they need more content for Disney Plus. I can't help but wonder.
Well, as you said earlier, I thought, you know, this jumped into my head because you mentioned that their adaptations are kind of their strongest suit. And I was thinking about how, you know, I thought the Peanuts movie animation was so innovative because they were taking computer animation, 3D space, but they were animating it in such a way that it looks flat. And then they went over it with hand-drawn animation to add all the little traditional accents. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which was Sony, did a similar thing, made an animated film that is computer animated, but has hand-drawn additions to make it look like a comic book literally came to life. And people fell in love with that look. And with Blue Sky and Marvel under the same house, they could essentially be doing, you know, Into the Spider-Verse like Marvel animated films for everything that isn't licensed out.
You know, and this is something that I see this and I realize Disney pre-21st Century Fox would never do, right? Pixar and Marvel, they do adaptation. Well, Pixar doesn't really, but Marvel, you know, Disney does adaptations, but they're usually of, you know, classic fairy tales or, you know, a novel that they turn into its own thing. There's nothing, you know, I mean, even if you look at Big Hero 6, it's nothing like the comic book. It's not, you know, they use that as an inspiration point, but didn't adapt it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the success Blue Sky has with their adaptations, and, you know, there are things like Peanuts and you know, Dr. Seuss that, you know, maybe they keep going that route, or maybe, you know, they use, especially when it has like a specific look, especially, you know, like a lot of these children's books have a look that they want to bring forward, which Disney would never do. So maybe they move forward with that kind of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Like I could see them doing, especially, you know, Mo Willems is so big on Disney Publishing that they could bring like Elephant and Piggy to the big screen. If any of you are parents, I'm sure that's familiar.
Yeah, and I was exactly thinking the same thing. There's a niche there that might not be scratched by Disney Animation and Pixar.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, since everything doesn't need to be theatrical these days, you know, maybe there is a future there that I just presumed wasn't going to be there, you know, 6 months ago.
Yeah. Well, what is Blue Sky working on right now? I know they have a film in development.
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is Nemoa. I don't believe there's an Ice Age 15 coming out or whatever.
I think that would be the 6th.
Yeah, it's Nimona. Nimona, which is based off of it's a webcomic. The gentleman who is who directed the Peanuts movie, Steve Martino, he's actually working on a musical of Pasek and Paul, who did La La Land and the songs from the updated lyrics for the Aladdin action adaptation. So I don't know, who knows, but it's one of those hidden Disney Plus gems that I think people will discover.
Well, and I mean, not so hidden because it's number 2 right now on trending.
I was going to say, I didn't think it was hidden because when I went to watch it yesterday, it was literally just the thing that was already selected when I turned on Disney
Okay,
Plus.
I didn't mean like right now. I mean, like someday, like people are gonna not think like the Peanuts movie. Where do I go to watch that? Obviously, Disney Plus. Like, I don't think most people are gonna think that.
No, but I will say, like, there's brand confusion because even at the shareholders meeting back in March, somebody asked Bob Chapek, are you guys doing anything else with the Peanuts? Not realizing the terms of the deal with Blue Sky was a one-picture deal, and assuming that with Disney's Fox acquisition, they somehow got like the rights to do more with the Peanuts. So I think like Mike said, it is confusing. There is a little bit of Peanuts on pretty much all of the new streaming services that launched within the past 24 months.
Well, it's funny because it's not so easy to remember what Disney has and what Disney doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I made a career at Disney of basically telling parts of Disney what other parts of Disney were doing. Like, because I worked at Disneyland and then I go to Disney World and I'll be like, how do we solve this problem? And I'd be like, well, Disneyland, we did it this way. And then so I would, I did that the whole time. And, so whenever Disney would buy something, I'd buy the book to learn all about it. I learned all about Star Wars. I learned all about Marvel. And then you could be like the guy. So it's not so easy. Like, While You Were Sleeping doesn't just jump to mind to every people as like a Disney movie.
But a fabulous Christmas movie that recently returned to Disney Plus.
Yeah, and by the way, all that National Geographic stuff on Disney Plus.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
So any final thoughts on the Peanuts movie?
I love it. I want more.
I do want more. It's like comfort food. I just want more.
But what more do you do without having a story?
You just do the same thing over again.
Just do.
That's all the Peanuts is. I think they could do a great like Halloween movie, like bringing the pumpkin, and that gives you an excuse to do it again. And there are more Peanuts characters than they really delved into. Like Rerun and some of the newer characters. I don't think you fully fleshed out like Pigpen and Peppermint Patty, and I think there's more they could do, but I don't want him to take it in a bold new direction.
Why hasn't the Candy Peppermint Patty ever licensed the character to be on the wrapper?
It's an excellent question.
Which came first?
That's a really good question.
I would presume it's
the chicken or the egg. I care about the Peppermint Patty or the Peppermint Patty.
So the character debuted in 1966. So I'm going to guess the Candy came first because that would make sense. But she was modeled after her favorite cousin, Patricia Swanson.
Yeah, York introduced it in 1940.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's currently a brand of Hershey.
I have a question. Have you ever been someplace where you referenced the Peanuts teacher voice? Rah, rah.
Everyone knows it. Like, I think people who didn't even grow up with Peanuts know that wah, 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 wah.
Okay. So I'm going to say tease that our next movie is on Monday, and it's The Greatest Showman, which with Alex, Cole, me apparently, and that might be it. And then next Thursday, we got our we got our regularly scheduled Marvel crew looking at Ant-Man and the Wasp. So thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy your vacation, Mike.
Thanks. I'll be back on Wednesday.
We'll be back live at 9.
Tropical destination I'm sure you're not heading to.
No, we're doing a staycation.
Understandable.
We're going to be back 9 a.m. with Jeremiah live from the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. And we'll see you then. Bye, everybody.